Number 10. Sif, Thor, Jane Foster. Sif and Thor were a long-standing couple in the comics for years. However, when Thor was sent to Midgard to basically learn humility and become a hero worthy of his title and hammer, he ended up falling in love with Jane Foster. At one point, Thor even wanted to marry Jane, but Odin forbade it. It actually took a very long time and a lot of hard work on Jane's part for her to be accepted by Odin, and even then, this really only happened after she died, sacrificing herself to defend Asgard. So talk about it taking a lot. It's like her life. And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love when we talk about love here on the channel, be sure to let us know by clicking that subscribe button. We check and, you know, we can see when people subscribe when they watch a video, and it'll show us that you love us. Number 9. Green Arrow, Black Canary, Batman. Batman, I bet you weren't expecting him in the mix. Green Arrow and Black Canary are a couple that are known for being very solid in the comics. When I think about forever couples, they're probably one of the few people that I think of when it comes to DC Comics. So, what happened? What's the tea? How did Batman wind up at this point, being the other person that's involved in this relationship? How did they become a part of my forbidden love triangle club here? Well, there was a time way back in Justice League of America issue number 84 from the first volume and issue number 88 when Batman and Black Canary kind of almost became a thing. This happened during a moment of vulnerability and weakness when Black Canary felt lonely and Batman, who is pretty much always lonely, let's be honest, chose to comfort her. They kissed in an instant in issue number 84, but then by issue 88, it was firmly established that Black Canary actually chose Green Arrow after weirdly going to Batman for advice on whether or not she should stay with Ollie and commit or just split. Although Batman honestly seemed a bit brokenhearted when he learned where Canary's head was at, to be honest. He was like, you always thought of me as a brother, but you kissed me. Wait, what? Weird times. Number 8. Vision, Scarlet Witch, Wonder Man. Scarlet Witch has had a turbulent dating history to say the least, and to top it all off in terms of all the weirdness involved in her romantic life, the two men who she most often finds herself stuck between choosing actually share the same brain waves. Vision, the android, was actually created with his brain patterns based off of Wonder Man. So when she later was no longer with Vision and she ended up with Simon, it did make sense, but it also didn't make it any less awkward, because I mean, it's kind of like moving from one person to someone that's like almost the same, at least in terms of their brain. Though Vision himself also created his own android wife, Virginia, using Wanda's brain patterns to do so. So both characters seem to have a very specific type, which seems to be each other. Number 7. Wolverine, Jean Grey, Cyclops. A modern day love triangle, if ever I have seen one. At times, Jean has been tempted by Wolverine, but for the most part I'd say she's pretty loyal and is consistently depicted as being more head over heels in love with Scott Summers. Like Scott's like her main squeeze, and then sometimes, every now and then, her and Wolverine have a thing. Personally, I remember this love triangle the best from the 90s animated series. In that version of the story, it always felt to me that Wolverine really wanted to have a relationship with Jean, but she was actively resistant, despite definitely having feelings for Logan, while Cyclops was very defensive and protective of Jean and his relationship. Not a great look if I'm being honest, Scott. A little overprotective was kind of how Scott usually came across to me as a kid watching this show. However, that being said, Wolverine and Jean have had their moments in the comics, and there has definitely been long-running will they won't they vibes between them. Lately though, this love triangle has actually become much less forbidden, as they seem to be more of a bona fide throuple lately. Just look at the floor plan for the Summers house on the blue area of the moon, and you're gonna see what I'm talking about. I'm just saying. There's some connecting rooms that are interesting.
And at 6, Silver Sable. After her mother was killed in a bombing, Silver implored her father to teach her how to avenge her mother's death. Despite his initial reluctance, Silver's father eventually saw her potential and started training her. When he passed away, Silver took over the Wild Pack and founded Silver Sable International. She first met Spider-Man while pursuing the Black Fox, and although she nearly caught him with the help of the New York City police, Spider-Man's actions inadvertently interfered. Silver Sable possesses an indomitable will and is able to resist a worldwide psychic manipulation from the goddess. She is also very skilled in hand-to-hand combat, martial arts, marksmanship, sword fighting, and gymnastics, attaboy Peter, and she's also an expert strategist and leader, capable of quickly assessing the strengths and weaknesses of opponents. Silver Sable has even managed to hold her own against the Punisher, but yeah, her and Spider-Man dated. Halfway through into number 5, Betty Brant. Now, Betty got married in Amazing Spider-Man number 156 and then headed off to Paris for a honeymoon that doubled as a work assignment for her new husband, reporter Ned Leeds. However, in Amazing Spider-Man issue number 183, we see Peter propose to Mary Jane and her turn him down, which puts him in a pretty dark place. Wonder why? Which means that when Betty shows up in Peter's apartment in Amazing Spider-Man number 184, there are going to be some issues. However, Betty claims that she has left Ned on their honeymoon while also on assignment together. But here's the biggest kicker. She never told Ned that she was leaving him. Haha, yeah. And then she still intends on sparking a romantic relationship with Peter. He ends up shutting her down in number 186, telling her that he can't be with her, but she doesn't take no for an answer, and in issue 187, she makes her own move and just goes for the kiss, saying, "Shut up darling, just kiss me." The next panel then cuts to a few hours later, which sparks the debate whether he and Betty ended up bumping more than just their lips, and then Ned ends up threatening to kill Peter if he doesn't stay out of Betty's life. But hey, it's still a thing, and I mean it's a messed up thing, but it still happened. Yikes. Speaking of messed up, in it for Sarah Stacy. Look, after learning that your father isn't actually your father, but rather your mother's ex, who she cheated on with his worst enemy, what do you think that you would do? Also, you're aging more rapidly because your real father has some form of goblin serum in his system that somehow passed on to you, but you only age up physically, meaning that you're mentally 10 with the body of an adult. Yeah, you might want to skip this number, since Pete and Sarah get closer after fighting off dealers in Paris, because she also has superpowers, because of course she does. This is made even worse, because they're in Paris without MJ, who Peter didn't bring for whatever reason, but the thing is, Peter thinks that it's entirely platonic. Yeah, this just goes to show that if your partner thinks someone is trying to get with you, you should probably listen, because lo and behold, Sarah ends up planting one on her almost dad, just as MJ shows up for a surprise visit. Yeah, I think the name of this storyline, which is since remembered, is way too fitting and definitely going to be seared into my brain now. God damn it. Getting close to the end in number 3, Cindy Moon. 13 years after her imprisonment, Cindy's story came to light when the orb revealed the Watcher's secrets to the world. Spider-Man, now aware of her existence, sought to free her. Cindy warned him about the danger of Morlun, but he opened the door anyway. Feeling doomed by this decision, she ended up attacking him, but learned that Morlun was already dead. Grateful for her freedom, Cindy donned an improvised costume made of webs and adopted the name of Silk. She sought to reconnect with her parents, and Spider-Man promised to help her search for him. As they spent time together, a deep bond formed between Spider-Man and Silk, and they began an intimate relationship. And I mean, that kind of makes sense given that, you know, you're both spider powered, so yeah. And this surprised Anna, Peter's roommate, who felt threatened by Cindy's presence, although I don't really understand that because he's just your roommate. After an initial confrontation, Cindy apologized and tried to mend their relationship, but it didn't work, obviously, as you all know. But hey, that's like number 2 in like my personal, like, dude should have been with them instead of MJ, that Cindy's number 2. But ultimately, in number 2, Kitty Pryde. In Operation Zero Tolerance's Shadowcat subfile 604842, it was revealed that Catherine Pryde was abducted as a baby by a Neo and replaced with another baby who grew up as Kitty Pryde, also known as Shadowcat of the X-Men. Despite encountering many similar holograms, the X-Men dismissed them as attempts to disturb them, but Charles Xavier eventually located Kitty and sought to recruit her for his school as a new X-Men member. Blah blah blah, things go on, she ends up meeting Spider-Man, they start dating. Yes, this is actually a thing. Spider-Man dated Kitty Pryde, and that's pretty dope actually. I don't know why I like this so much. Like, I put it at number 2 because I just like the fact that they dated, but hey, that's not the only person that Kitty's dated either. She crossed paths with the Guardians of the Galaxy when they rescued a young Jean Grey, and then she ended up dating and getting engaged to Star-Lord. But hey, she dated Peter before that, so you know what? That's the OTP, as the kids used to say. And finally, in number 1, Felicia Hardy. Look, I have a whole spiel about who Felicia Hardy is, but we all know the Black Cat. And I'm going to say it. Peter should have been with Felicia. Okay, I get that she's like a pseudo criminal, but like, dude, look at the Spider-Man PS4 game. MJ is so incredibly toxic in that game. But then Felicia shows up and you're just like, why am I not here? Spider-Man Web of Shadows, you choose Felicia every damn time. Okay, I don't care if it means I'm evil. I don't care about the black suit. I just want Felicia. I cosplay Spider-Man so that I can find someone at a convention who is cosplaying Felicia Hardy, and then I can just start a life with them. Okay, like, come on. I don't need to say anything else. I don't need to talk about all of this because it's Felicia. He should have done it. He should have hit it. And you know what? When you think in a 10, Mary Jane Watson. After several attempts by Aunt May to bring Peter and MJ together, Mary Jane finally visited Peter's home. However, Spider-Man was away fighting the Spider Slayer robots at the moment. In her visit, she encountered both Betty Brant and Liz Allen, both also competing for Peter's affections. They were captivated by Mary Jane's beauty. Like her mother and sister, Mary Jane had a passion for the performing arts as well. She aspired for a career on Broadway or in film, and she excelled in high school productions. Eventually, Peter and Mary Jane got married on the front steps of New York City Hall, with her uncle, not his, because his is dead, Judge Spencer Watson residing over the ceremony. Later, Peter faced a challenging quest to save Aunt May's life after she was shot, which was a shot that was intended for him, but seeking the help of Doctor Strange, they realized that not even magic could cure her, because, you know, she was basically already in the grave. Peter appealed to Tony Stark for help, and he was sent to like $2 million to cover hospital fees, but that wasn't gonna be enough. So, Peter sold his marriage to MJ to Mephisto to save his aunt, who has been elderly since the 60s and beyond even the point of magic saving her. Dude, let it go. In at 9, Gwen Stacy. Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker were classmates at Empire State University. Initially distant due to Peter's preoccupation, with being Spider-Man, as time passed, they developed a romantic connection. Gwen was a science major who admired Peter's intellect and unique personality, unique air quotes, but she became Peter's first true love. Tragically though, Gwen was ambushed by the Green Goblin, who sought to lure Spider-Man into a trap. He kidnapped her and took her to the Brooklyn Bridge. In a fierce battle, Spider-Man tried to save her, but he was weakened due to an illness. He was sick at the time because, Green Goblin has the perfect timing. And then when Green Goblin pushed Gwen off the bridge, Spider-Man managed to catch her with a web, but the sudden stop broke her neck. Probably the most realistic moment in Spider-Man comic books of being caught by a web. Despite being alive during the battle, yeah, she was hanging there, her neck was broken, she ended up passing away due to suffocation, leading her to feel betrayed because, she had only now found out Spider-Man's identity, even though she had been dating Peter. So yeah, that's kind of messed up. Gwen Stacy's death became one of the most heart-wrenching and pivotal moments in Spider-Man's life though, leaving a lasting impact on both the hero and the readers and just, every other Spider-Man media ever. Sorry Andrew, I guess you literally couldn't save her. It was written in the stars. It was a canon event. In at 8, Anna Marconi. Speaking of a version of Spider-Man that's not the mainstream one, Andrew Garfield, let's discuss the Superior Spider-Man and his fascination with Anna Marconi. Superior Spider-Man is actually Otto Octavius, who prior to the Superior Spider-Man storyline had brain swapped with Peter. Yet a piece of Peter was still there in his own body. I mean, I'd hope so because, it's a freaking brain swap. That's kind of weird to begin with. Who eventually ended up convincing Otto to be a hero, although he was a darker one. Doc Ock was up to some really shady stuff while pretending to be Peter as well. Since Peter was young, handsome, and in shape, he had actual women in his life. So Otto tried his luck at getting Mary Jane to sleep with him, but failed miserably, thank the Lord. So when things weren't going well, he went to Anna Marconi, whom Otto Peter started dating. She had no idea what the real situation was, because if he had said anything, she probably would have had him committed. And while it's unclear if they ever hopped on the good foot and did the bad thing, to quote Austin Powers, it's obvious that things were at least going in that direction. Okay, Otto was in love with her, which was a surprise since he decided to give Peter back his body to save her. But still, it's still a horrific story and immoral in the highest order. But hey, it's a Spider-Man love interest So there you go. It belongs on this list. Jesus Christ. And at 7, Carly Cooper. Man, Peter Parker, Carly Cooper, what is with the alliteration in Marvel Comics? Carly and Peter dated for a brief time, with Carly breaking up with him after finding out that he was Spider-Man. In spite of their past relationship though, Carly helped Peter track down the Vultures, and their leader, the original Vulture, well, the new Vultures. It was like a gang of them, and their leader who was Adrian Toomes. Afterwards, Carly dated Detective Walker Bolt up until his death, and when Dr. Octopus switched minds with Spider-Man, Carly was the only person to be told by Doc Ock that he was actually Peter Parker moments before his death. So the Doc Ock body was actually Peter, right? So Carly was the only one who knew that. Or maybe it was that Doc Ock told her that he wasn't Peter's body before Doc Ock died. I'm not exactly sure, I'm a bit hazy on the details. Anyways, Carly began to investigate if what she was told was true, and it was. With assistance from Yuri Watanabe, she was able to confirm that Otto was in possession of Peter's body and that Peter had died. She visited his grave, but was surprised when it caved in, revealing that the body had been secretly exhumed. Carly was then ambushed and taken to the Goblin Underground, where she was interrogated about Spider-Man's true identity, but hey, they still dated, it still counts, it's going on the list. Alright, I'm going weird with this. I'm not gonna go everyone that everyone already knows. I'm gonna make you think.
Coming in at number 6, we have Indris Mumji. Before he was one of the most beloved superheroes on the planet due to the popularity of the Iron Man movies, one of the most well-known traits of Tony Stark that has since been dropped is the character's struggles with being an alcoholic, and Indris is a character directly connected to that major storyline. Hired by the villainous Obadiah Stane, Indris posed as a bystander rescued by Iron Man and seduced Tony using pheromone chemicals along with her natural charms. Indris was ruthless and continually pushed Tony to relying on alcohol, and then eventually broke his heart at Stane's command, leaving Tony Stark at rock bottom and his drinking problems worse than ever, making this romance one of pure tragedy. Coming in at number 5, we have Bethany Cave. Another woman who met Tony during his heavy drinking phase, Bethany was assigned to Tony Stark's security team shortly after the death of her husband, and eventually found some comfort in the invincible Iron Man's arms. While Tony's drinking was a major issue in their relationship for a while, she would be an essential part in the process of helping him sober up. Unfortunately, their romance was not meant to last, as Bethany would eventually discover her husband was secretly alive, and after rescuing him from his circumstances, left Tony to be with the man she was meant to be with. Better luck next time, Stark. Coming in at number 4, we have Janet Van Dyne, aka The Wasp. Dating a coworker always comes with complications, and both Iron Man and the Wasp found out that lesson the hard way. After her marriage to Hank Pym, the original Ant-Man, fell apart, Janet found herself rebounding with Tony Stark, while being unaware that he was actually Iron Man, aka the co-founder of the Avengers team along with her and Hank. Even Captain America tried to warn Tony that their relationship was doomed for disaster, but it took Janet finding out for herself that Iron Man and Tony Stark are one and the same to put an end to their romance, even if they'd share a few more flirty moments in the future once she was properly divorced from Hank Pym. Coming in at number 3, we have Natasha Romanoff, aka the Black Widow. If I had a nickel for every time Tony Stark was romanced by an undercover agent within his own company, we'd probably have more nickels than you'd expect. Initially falling for Natasha while she was still a spy for the Russian government, their romance initially ended once Tony found out about the whole secret agent for an enemy power thing. However, the two were surprised to find their destinies intertwined when they both were early members of the Avengers team, now fighting for the same side. And while they initially seemed ready to try their romance again, the two have since decided to remain friends and allies, and determined the fate of the planet is probably more important than their office flirting. Coming in at number 2, we have Jennifer Walters, aka the Incredible She-Hulk. Most of the relationships I've listed in this video have either ended tragically or at the very least caused a lot of drama in Tony's life. That said, it's a nice change of pace that Tony was able to enjoy a more fun and casual relationship with someone who viewed things the same way that he did, which is exactly why Iron Man and She-Hulk made such a great pair. Never afraid to call Tony out for the double standard of how their casual love lives were talked about, Jennifer and Tony had great chemistry, and when it comes to the comic books, might be my favorite pairing for Iron Man. But if you really pushed me on my favorite Iron Man romance overall, well, coming in at our top spot, we have Pepper Potts from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Pepper is a great character in the Marvel comics as well, but my favorite interpretation of this duo's relationship has to be between Robert Downey Jr.'s Tony Stark and Gwyneth Paltrow's Pepper Potts. Capable of running Stark Industries while Tony is saving the world and battling his own inner demons, Pepper is the counterbalance Tony needs to stop himself from going overboard. And watching their arc of their relationship over the course of the entire MCU is one of the best running plot threads throughout the entire Infinity Saga. And who knows, there might not even be an MCU if the dynamic between Tony and Pepper wasn't so intriguing in the very first movie. And for that reason, I've gotta say that she's the very best.
Number 10, Counselor Martha of the Sea, Green Lantern, and Citizen of the Cliffs. This one might be more niche, but my fellow fans of the Far Sector series will know what I'm talking about here. And if that isn't you, have I mentioned how much I love Far Sector and how you should really read it? Far Sector is from the now defunct Young Animals imprint at DC and was a series written by award-winning sci-fi writer N.K. Jemisin with stunning mind-blowing artwork by Jamal Campbell, a dream team if ever there was one. Far Sector centers around a new Green Lantern from Earth, Sojourner Malene. She is sent to an area so distant it is only known as the Far Sector. While working on this alien world, she herself gets caught in a love triangle between the extremely sexy and more emotional Counselor Martha of the Sea and her also extremely sexy but more stoic and controlled ally, Citizen of the Cliffs. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving what you see here at Top 10 Nerd, please go check out our newest channel, Most Amazing Top 10 Anime. Number 9, Rexplode, Adam Eve, and Invincible. This one is probably made more famous by the animated series Invincible, and actually, based on the Invincible comics, I would say it's not even the most iconic love triangle from the series, the comic series itself, but it is one more people are familiar with based on the fact that more people have definitely watched the Invincible animated series at this point probably than read the comics. At least, I think so. I'd be surprised if that wasn't true, because for a while the animated series was pretty mainstream, and hopefully it will become mainstream again in the future when we get our season 2, whenever that drops, whenever that happens. I'm sure it's coming. Rexplode is the boyfriend of Samantha Wilkins, more commonly known by her superhero name Adam Eve. Eve, however, after meeting Mark, aka Invincible, definitely seems to connect with him and have maybe some feelings for him. When Rex cheats on Eve, she ends up breaking up with him, and while season 1 of the animated series doesn't really cement their relationship as Mark himself has found a girlfriend in Amber, similar to the comic series, the animated series features love triangles on top of love triangles really, and we know eventually Mark and Eve are going to get together because that's just how it goes. Number 8, Phantom X, Psylocke, and Phantom X? This is a really weird one. It involves Phantom X and his female counterpart, who is technically also Phantom X and the once lover of Phantom X, Psylocke. And this is back when Psylocke was a combo of Betsy's mind in Quanen's body, which we later learn also had within it Quanen's consciousness apparently, but just more in the backseat than the driver's seat. Yeah, it's super weird and super complicated and kinda gross. Like most things involving, well, both Phantom X and at least that past version of Psylocke where everything was really weird. At one point, Phantom X was even jealous of his own female self's relationship with Psylocke, which is super weird and confusing, being jealous of yourself. Number 7, Maggie Sawyer, Batwoman, and Nocturna. Unfortunately, a lot of people know about the weirdness that is this love triangle. While Maggie Sawyer is often known for being the longtime true love of Kate Kane, when these two were right about to get married after being engaged, plans changed for them. Instead, Batwoman ended up with Nocturna for a while and became a kind of vampire, with lines of consent between Nocturna and her being severely crossed. Hence why I say, unfortunately, this is a love triangle that is fairly well known. It was a controversial choice in the comics and a relationship that a lot of people were not fans of because it felt like Kate was kind of being preyed on by Nocturna and had been forced to leave a fulfilling relationship by DC's creative management simply to prevent her queer marriage to Maggie, which a lot of people were like, why did you do that? DC claimed they had their reasons and it didn't have to do with the fact they didn't want Kate to get married to Maggie, but we have our doubts. Number 6. Clown. The Clown is Kazimierz Kazimierczak, but people just call him Kazi for short. He was an assassin hired to eliminate Clint Barton's Hawkeye for the Tracksuit Dracula gang, and other interested parties. A lot of interested parties. A lot of people wanted Clint dead. While this might seem like a strange person for Kate Bishop's Hawkeye to get romantic with, she didn't really know who he was at the time. Both Kazi and Kate were at the same party and ended up talking, enjoying one another's company, and then this led to a little bit of flirting at the end. Though Kate never knew that Kazi was actually an assassin who was employed to take out her partner and friend Clint. The two ended up merely sharing a kiss after talking with one another all night until the party they were both at ended. I will say I also noticed in the Hawkeye series when the Clown's MCU counterpart and Kate's MCU counterpart seemed to share a lingering look as Kazi ran away from Kate. I was the only one, I feel like, that was watching that was like, oh, is it gonna be a thing? Is there gonna be a thing? There was no romance, but they did have a look. They did have a look. Number 5. Executioner. Not the Executioner that you know from Thor, Scourge, to be clear, but rather Daniel Dubois. Daniel is the son of the villain Princess Python. Kate attempted to mentor Daniel, and the two, who go to school together, attended a charity event as one another's date. However, when the Young Avengers seemingly show up on the scene with a supposed Hawkeye complimenting Kate's dress, Daniel began to wonder if Kate Bishop really was Hawkeye as he suspected. In truth, this other version of Hawkeye was not who they appeared to be, and Kate was the real Kate Bishop Hawkeye, obviously. Executioner is a member of the Young Masters of Evil and is later seen among the ranks of the Masters of Evil, just like Kate growing up, just like the Young Avengers, and they all got Avengers membership as well. I'm assuming they all have little Avengers membership cards. I think if you're on the Avengers, you get a membership card. Number 4. Fuse. Fuse is Johnny Watts, who ended up becoming one of Kate's partners and friends when she started Hawk Investigations. As they worked together and spent more time together, he began to develop feelings for Kate. Things got kinda weird when Madame Mask and a clone body of Kate ended up taking things to a more physical and intimate level with Johnny. However, later on, Kate did admit that she had feelings for Johnny, and likewise, he for her. Eventually, Johnny also revealed that he had superpowers when he was forced to use them to save Kate's life. He would take up the name of Fuse and end up joining Kate when she decided to go help out the West Coast Avengers. However, in her latest series, Hawkeye Kate Bishop, it was revealed that the two decided to break off their romance when Kate decided to head back to New York. Number 3. Speed. Tommy Shepard might currently be with Prodigy in the comics, but he is one of my sweet bye babes, and he's also had a thing with Kate in the past as well. In fact, during their time together on the Young Avengers, the attraction between the two even created some tension, as Kate found herself stuck between Speed and Patriot in a sort of love triangle. Who's she gonna be with? At one point, Speed ended up being her kiss on New Year's Eve when the team celebrated the new year together. There are also alternate realities where these two have even ended up married, although it seems more than likely currently that Prodigy could end up being Speed's endgame, at least in my opinion. Regardless, Kate and Tommy definitely have a strong connection to one another and still remain friends to this day, who care about one another a lot and share a strong bond due to their time together on the Young Avengers team. Number 2. Patriot. Patriot has been an on and off romantic interest of Kate's. He is Elijah Bradley, or Eli Bradley, grandson of Isaiah Bradley, who, yes, we met in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier Disney Plus series in the MCU. Eli initially had super soldier-like powers, which he got through using the mutant hormone growth drug, much to the disappointment of his teammates on the Young Avengers. When they found out about this, they were all pretty worried about him, Kate included. In the end, however, Eli would gain permanent super soldier-like powers after receiving a blood transfusion from his grandfather, who himself was one of the first super soldiers to have been created when the US government and military attempted to recreate Dr. Erskine's formula. Patriot and Hawkeye went on a few awkward dates and shared a kiss when they both found themselves trapped under rubble during Siege. Number 1. Novar. Honestly, this was a hard one to pick a number 1 for. I feel like it's a toss-up between the top few spots here, but I went with Novar, so Take it or leave it. You let me know what you think about that ranking. Novar, or Marvel Boy, is probably one of the greatest, or at least most prominent loves of Kate's life. The two hooked up and then decided to begin dating, but it didn't end up lasting, as Novar revealed that although he really liked Kate, he would leave her for his ex if he was given a chance to be with her again. Not a great look. He even tried to do so, but then it turned out that that version of his ex, Oubliette, was merely an illusion and not the real one. Kate, of course, did not like learning this and decided to permanently break things off, even when Novar tried to get back together with her. She needed someone who was serious about her and their relationship, someone who would be committed to her and for whom she wouldn't just be a placeholder. I get it, girl. Still, this hasn't stopped the two from ending up together in alternate realities, and despite how their relationship ended, Kate and Novar have still managed to stay friends.
Coming in at number 10, we have Lisa Lascelles from the alternate universe of Earth 1. Lisa hails from a world intended to be a modern take on the Superman origin story. Smitten with a cute young reporter in her apartment building named Clark Kent, Lisa is initially hurt when it seems that Clark is always running off and avoiding quality time together. Eventually, however, she discovers his Superman costume inside his apartment, and while initially overwhelmed at the idea she'd been interested in a superhero, she eventually would help save Clark's life by distracting this universe's version of General Zod with a crashing truck. All of this goes to show that no matter what universe Superman is in, he can't seem to avoid girls with the initials LL. Coming in at number 9, we have Kathryn Grant. Although best known in recent years as being a major supporting player for Supergirl, Kat Grant initially began as a romantic rival for Lois Lane to try and catch Clark's eye as the newest gossip columnist for the Daily Planet. While going on a couple dates with Clark, eventually they came to see each other as just friends, and while initially hostile with both Lois Lane and Perry White, Kat would go on to become an acclaimed reporter in her own right, and eventually gained her own talk show in Metropolis before somehow getting involved as Lex Luthor's press secretary during his brief stint as President of the United States. Talk about a varied career. Coming in at number 8, we have Luma Lainai, the Superwoman from the planet Starl. In a delightfully goofy story from the early 1960s, Supergirl decides to use the computers in the Fortress of Solitude to find the perfect mate for Superman, because apparently he's been a bit depressed lately. The computers discover a superpowered hero named Luma from the distant planet Starl, and after Superman meets her, the two instantly fall in love. However, this romance wasn't meant to last, as Luma's powers only worked under the light of her planet's blue sun, while the sun of planet Earth was as deadly to her as kryptonite was to Superman. Realizing that Superman needed to be able to protect Earth, the two super lovers realize they can never truly be together, and unfortunately, Luma hasn't been seen in comics canon ever since. Coming in at number 7, we have another unfortunately short-lived romance with Sally Selwyn. After exposure to red kryptonite resulted in Superman's memory getting completely wiped, he found himself hired as a ranch hand on the wealthy Selwyn estate, taking the temporary name of Jim White. While suffering from amnesia, Jim and the owner of the ranch, Sally Selwyn, fell deeply in love. Unfortunately for Sally, after the effects of the red kryptonite wore off, Superman's memories were restored of everything except his relationship with Sally, causing him to unknowingly leave their life behind, and with Sally's heart apparently being forever broken. Man, these early Superman romance stories were pretty brutal on the heartstrings. Coming in at number 6, we have the Man of Steel himself, Superman. When your superpower involves mind-controlling people sealed with a kiss, it's understandably going to cause some drama, and that's exactly what happened in the infamous Hush storyline. Needing a heavyweight to protect herself against Batman and Catwoman, Poison Ivy ensnares the most powerful superhero on the planet under her control, and nearly has him kill the Dark Knight. The only reason that Batman is able to survive this battle is due to Superman holding back his strength as much as he can, even if he no longer directly controls his limbs thanks to Poison Ivy's kiss. Eventually, Superman breaks free when he's needed to save Lois Lane, showing that even mind-controlling kisses can't conquer true love. Coming in at number 5, we've got to go with Harvey Dent. One of the best things to ever happen to Poison Ivy as a character was her rise in popularity due to Batman the Animated Series, and her very first episode in that show is a great example as to why. Introduced as the beautiful new girlfriend of District Attorney Harvey Dent before his tragic turn into Two-Face, Harvey Dent soon finds himself in a coma after a particularly deep kiss from Pamela. Pursued by Batman, Pamela reveals herself as Poison Ivy, the latest supervillain in Gotham who seduced and manipulated Harvey Dent in order for revenge at all the flowers he tore up when building a new Gotham City prison. In an ironic twist, this very same prison is where Poison Ivy would end up after her scheme failed and her true colors were revealed. Coming in at number 4, we've got the tragic romance of Poison Ivy and Clayface. While many of the entries on this list so far have featured Ivy manipulating people, the most heartbreaking betrayal of this nature might be the time she made Clayface fall in love with her. While the shape-shifting villain was stuck inside Arkham Asylum, Pamela made him believe they were genuinely in love and married, and Clayface spent much of his time dreaming of seeing his wife again. Unfortunately, Batman would eventually need to let him know the truth, that Poison Ivy was controlling him not just with seduction, but with seeds implanted within his clay body, breaking Clayface's heart with the ultimate betrayal that he wasn't really in love after all. Coming in at number 3, we have the Dark Knight himself, Batman. While Poison Ivy has definitely flirted with the Caped Crusader less often in recent years, in many early Batman adventures, Ivy had her eyes set on the very man trying to stop her schemes. And while there are a few storylines where this attraction was more than one-sided, for the most part, this relationship mostly consisted of Poison Ivy kissing Batman to mind control him and aid in her plant-based plans. Luckily, by this point, Batman usually has several antidotes for each of his villains' various chemicals of choice, but it's still notable just how many times in the past Batman's had his brain wiped by a vine-controlling redhead. Coming in at number 2, we have the Floronic Man. A supervillain connected to the green, a primordial energy source connected to all plant life on the planet, the Floronic Man fulfills the same role as Mark Legrand did in some version of Pamela's origin story, experimenting on her as his assistant and turning her into a plant-human hybrid similar to himself. In a notable storyline, he almost managed to use some of Poison Ivy's DNA to create the ultimate plant life form between the two of them, but resulted in Pamela changing her mind and allying herself with Batman in order to defeat the plant-based monster with electricity, destroying the villain once and for all, or at least until he was reused as a villain for a new Swamp Thing series. And finally, coming in at our top spot, who else could it be but Harley Quinn? Created for the very same animated series that made Poison Ivy one of Batman's most well-known villains, Harley Quinn has had one of the best character arcs in all of comics, growing from a one-note henchman of the Joker to becoming her own fully fleshed-out character with one of the most popular romances that comic books have ever seen. Harley and Pamela are perfect for one another, as Poison Ivy teaches Harley Quinn how to be her own woman, free from the Joker's abuse, and Harley allows Pamela to connect more with her human side instead of just obsessing over plants. These two better each other in every way, and that's why Harley Quinn's gotta take the top spot on this list. Coming in at number 10, we've got Catwoman, a pairing that's mostly the stuff of fandom for now, but that's gotten enough official hints and references over the years to earn an honorable mention on this list. Catwoman and Poison Ivy both had a penchant for many years to keep up a flirty relationship with the Dark Knight, leading many fans to speculate that the bisexual Poison Ivy could also be interested in her fellow female supervillain. With some flirty back and forths through their history in the comics, alongside a very pointed mind control kiss during the animated film Batman Hush, it's clear that Catwoman and Poison Ivy might just have more in common than a rivalry with the Caped Crusader. Coming in at number 9, we have Darshan Bapna, a more recent character from Poison Ivy's very first limited series in 2016. Forced into becoming a scientist due to large expectations from his family, botany was the area of science that bored Darshan the least, even if his true passion was to be a musician. Darshan first became close with Pamela when the two briefly worked together at the Gotham City Botanical Gardens, with her first becoming interested in him following the revelation that he practices complete nonviolence and won't even eat plants, since he considers them to have a soul. And if we know anything, it's that being kind to plants is kind of the way to Poison Ivy's heart, even if it means an incredibly restrictive diet along the way. Coming in at number 8, we have Dick Grayson, specifically the version portrayed by Chris O'Donnell in the 1997 film Batman and Robin. A highly controversial movie from the 90s, this film saw Poison Ivy, portrayed by Uma Thurman, as arguably the most villainous character in a movie with 3 different villains. Manipulating both Mr. Freeze and Bane to aid in her dirty work, this version of Poison Ivy also directly tries to seduce both Batman and Robin, but winds up being unable to poison the young sidekick because he conveniently had some fake rubber lips made for the occasion. Not quite as ridiculous as a Bat credit card, but hey, at least this ill-advised romance was ended before it could really get going. Coming in at number 7, we have Dr. Marc Legrand. In the very first Bronze Age version of the Poison Ivy character, her origin story was heavily tied to an abusive doctor named Marc Legrand. As a promising young botanist, Pamela was seduced into helping Legrand steal an Egyptian artifact filled with magical herbs. Afraid that Pamela will betray him to the authorities, Legrand later tried to poison his assistant with these very same herbs, unaware that they would instead gift her with a complete immunity to poison and the beginning of her talent for controlling plants. And although Poison Ivy's origin story would be updated and retconned many times over the years, we'll still always remember the original bad guy who learned the hard way not to mess with Poison Ivy.
Number 6, Captain Marvel. Carol is really just Jessica Drew's best friend forever, but despite them being the facts, there are still a ton of people who ship these two together as more than friends. The chemistry between Jessica Drew and Carol Danvers is really great, which is what makes it easy to accept that they are the best of friends, but some see that there could be more to these two than just a very close friendship. And I cannot deny myself, if either of these women decided that they wanted to date women, they would actually be seemingly pretty perfectly matched for each other. There are times when Carol and Jessica in the comics even sound like an old bickering married couple, and then there are other times where they're so kind, considerate, loving, and loyal to each other that you could believe that they were like divine soulmates. So although this is a ship that isn't completely real or anything, I gotta say, I kinda like it. I kinda like it as a ship, which is why I included it. So if you ship those two as more than friends, that's alright. I stand by it. Put it in your fanfics. Number 5, Jerry Hunt. Jerry Hunt was an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. who stumbled upon Jessica Drew's Spider-Woman when she was using her powers as a thief, just trying to survive and get by. Or well, she tried to be a thief briefly and then she was like, actually I shouldn't do this. I'll just be a hero instead, even though that doesn't pay anything. Oh boy, how am I gonna eat food? Coming across her path, Jerry managed to unmask Spider-Woman and found her appearance to be familiar. After he was injured, Jessica saved his life, and as he lay recovering at the end of that very first issue of Spider-Woman from the 1970s, he claimed that for whatever reason, he wanted that woman. He wasn't sure if he wanted to catch her or he wanted to love her, but boy oh boy did he want her. Jerry would later recall where he'd seen Jessica before in S.H.I.E.L.D. files where he saw her back in her Hydra days. Eventually, Jerry would end up finding Spider-Woman again, and for a time the two would even date. Jerry would also become an ally to Spider-Woman, helping her fight against villains and even trying to help her learn more about her own mysterious past. In the end, they would decide to break up when Jerry had to go back to London for work. Jess, you see, would rather stay put, and so that was the end of their romance. Number 4, Norman Osborn. For the daughter of Spider-Man, Spider-Woman May Mayday Parker, she'd actually end up falling in love with the descendant of a rival family, the Osborns. It's like a Romeo and Juliet love story. I mean, maybe the Osborns also isn't a rival family, but they're at least a complicated family in regards to their relation to the Parkers, truth be told. There were both good and awful memories there. Normie Osborn, Norman Osborn's grandson and Harry Osborn's son, became May's friend and ally after she saw the tragedy in him when he was Green Goblin and actually helped to reform him. He would end up married to another reformed villain and ally, Brenda Drago, the daughter of the second Vulture. However, before that came to pass, May revealed that she had feelings for Normie. Although he rejected her, citing their 4-year age difference and the fact that her father would freak as reasons, it was later revealed that Normie actually did have feelings for May, when we saw into his comatose visions, where Normie was haunted by his grandfather, Norman Osborn, who hounded him for falling in love with the girl. Also, Normie did really like May, but they couldn't be together. It wasn't meant to be. Number 3. Hawkeye. Jessica Drew's Spider-Woman and Clint Barton's Hawkeye ended up getting together as a result of their time on the Avengers. They both developed feelings for one another and decided to start dating. However, due to some misinterpretation of the boundaries of that relationship, the two ended up calling it quits. Clint thought that he and Jess were keeping things casual, and he ended up having a one-night stand with somebody else outside of the relationship, which Jessica was not happy about when she found out, because she thought things were more serious between them and more monogamous. It also ended on a not so great note, as Jess, upset and hurt, lashed out by physically hitting Clint. Also, let's remember that Jess does have super strength, though I'm sure she wasn't using it there, but still, that makes this moment like even more worse in my mind. Both Clint and Jess made mistakes when it came to the whole situation between them, but fortunately, they were eventually able to move on and become friends again, though awkward moments still arise between the two as a result of this relationship. Number 2. Spider-Man. Obviously, we are once again switching up Spider-Womans for a moment. Although Gwen Stacy of Earth 65 is now known as Ghost Spider, there was a time when she too went by Spider-Woman. She has been known as Spider-Gwen most prominently from a reader standpoint, but within the narrative, Spider-Woman and Ghost Spider are more common names for that character. This alternate version of 616's Gwen Stacy ends up falling in love with a different Spider-Man other than Peter Parker. She is more known for her relationship with and love of Earth 1610's Miles Morales, aka Spider-Man. In fact, there is even an alternate future where these two end up together, settle down, and they have kids. In that reality, they are both heroes and also kind of celebrities because of their heroics. Number 1. Porcupine. Roger Gawking is a fan favorite when it comes to Jessica Drew's romances. He was once the villain Porcupine, who ended up becoming involved in a case that Jessica was investigating as a PI. The spouses, paramours, and villains had been kidnapped and were being kept safe in exchange for ransom money that the villains were forced to pay. When Jessica went to investigate, she found a community of villains' loved ones who were essentially pretending they had been kidnapped in exchange for money, as many of them were victims of abuse at the hands of said villains. In the end, Jessica helped to resolve this conflict while still protecting the community of victims. Roger would go on to become an ally and friend to Jess, and also act as her babysitter after her son Jerry was born. Eventually, it would be revealed that Roger had feelings for Jess, and after believing he'd been killed only to find out he'd actually survived, the two shared a kiss, with Jess confirming that she also had feelings for Roger. More recently in the comics, Jess's busy heroic life, as well as her inability to see Roger as her equal, caused the two of them to break things off. Or more specifically, Roger to dump Jessica. I gotta say though, I kinda get it. I feel like Jessica did not have a lot of time for Roger. Poor Roger. Hopefully they can get back together, maybe, again, maybe? Not caught up with my Spider-Woman right now, so if they're back together, please don't tell me. I don't want any spoilers. A few issues behind, friends. Number 10, Morlun. Okay, so really this isn't Jessica Drew's Spider-Woman specifically, but it definitely looked like her. On Loom World, Jessica Drew's doppelganger was actually a lover of the inheritor and villain Morlun. As such, this odd coincidence actually allowed Jessica Drew to infiltrate Loom World to get valuable intel on the Inheritors and the Master Weaver. This intel would help the Spider Army to defeat the Inheritors and save the day, making the fact that she was forced to kiss Morlun worth it, I'm sure. I mean, at least I hope it was worth it. Oddly enough, although Jessica was not great at going undercover as her doppelganger, who by all regards was pretty much a big jerky jerk on this world, she still managed to get what she needed, utilizing her pheromones to distract from inconsistencies and prove that all in all, Spider-Woman is actually a really great spy, even when she has no plan and is kind of flying by the seat of her pants. Improvisational spy times. Number 9, Spider-Man. While Jessica Drew's Spider-Woman and Peter Parker's Spider-Man aren't really a match made in heaven in any regards. In fact, at times Jessica finds Peter kinda grating and Peter finds Jessica a bit too intense. Jessica Drew hasn't been the only one to take up the Spider-Woman mantle. For a time, while her powers were inconsistent, after having been lost, returned, and then stolen and slowly recovering them over time, she actually actually bequeathed the name to another superpowered young woman, Maddie Franklin. Maddie became known for a time as Spider-Woman in Jessica's stead after being granted superpowers of her own. She also ended up becoming enamored with one Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man. At one point, Spider-Man gives Maddie's Spider-Woman CPR, and she uses the opportunity to kiss him. This was during a time when Mary Jane was MIA and believed dead. In fact, that's like the previous issue to this kiss. However, despite MJ possibly being dead, Peter felt super uncomfortable with the romance and ultimately rejected Spider-Woman, even going so far as to have her memory wiped when it came to the truth of his secret identity. He felt that the age difference between them was too great, and also that his secret was too big a burden for someone so young to carry. Plus, he wasn't convinced that Mary Jane was truly dead, holding out hope that she was alive and would somehow be saved in return. Turned out he was right, by the way, that did end up happening. Still, that rejection of young Maddie was pretty harsh. Memory wiped? Woo, ouch. I know she's young, but geez, that would mess me up. I mean, I guess you won't remember it because your mind was wiped, so there's that. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want to learn about more Spider-Woman love interests or just Spidey love interests in general, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. David Ashima. David was Jessica Drew, aka Spider-Woman's landlord, when she was living in San Francisco with her good friend Lindsay McCabe. I love Lindsay. I'm so glad that she's returned in the comics. David and Jessica hit it off and began dating. However, the relationship didn't last, as eventually David Ashima discovered that Jessica Drew was secretly Spider-Woman, also known in San Fran as the Dark Angel of San Francisco. This was all too much for David, and the two ended up calling it quits on their relationship. However, it should be noted that this whole ordeal would not stop David from later asking out Kitty Pryde when some of the X-Men came to visit Jessica. Number 7. Shroud. Shroud was the love interest of Julia Carpenter's Spider-Woman. While this Spider-Woman was also married at one point, her husband and her ended up getting divorced, with him getting custody of their daughter, Rachel, due to Julia's unexplained absences as a result of her secret life as the hero, Spider-Woman. The Shroud and Spider-Woman would fall in love when he helped her after she had lost her powers. It was Shroud who helped restore them and also helped Julia to recover from being paralyzed with physical therapy. Unfortunately, the romance wouldn't last, but even after they broke up, the Shroud refused to let Julia go and began stalking her in an attempt to get back together with her because he believed it would help him, fix his life. Yeah, that didn't end well. Julia was like, don't stalk me. Stop that. I'm gonna lay a trap for you.
Coming in at number 6, we have Maxima, the Queen of Almerac. Another character that's since been updated to be a little bit less Superman obsessed. The original version of Maxima was a warlord queen who wished for the ultimate mate so that her children would be the strongest beings possible to continue ruling Almerac. Deciding that the last Kryptonian fit the bill perfectly, Maxima was outraged when it turns out that Superman doesn't just want to randomly give out his genetics. The two would become frequent combatants ever since, often with a bit of flirty tension, but with Maxima usually choosing to side with the Justice League over other interstellar threats such as Warworld or the Wrath of Brainiac. Coming in at number 5, we have Lori Lamaris, aka that time that Superman dated a mermaid. Born a young child from the secret undersea kingdom of Atlantis, Lori initially met Clark Kent in the original DC Comics continuity that saw him adventuring at a young age as Superboy. Reuniting years later once he'd become a full-fledged Superman, Lori and Clark dated for a time while she posed as a woman in a wheelchair to disguise her mermaid tail. Unfortunately, Lori would later begin to fall for another merman named Ronal, leaving Clark heartbroken, but eventually leading him to fall for another L-named woman, Lois Lane. Coming in at number 4, we have Lana Lang, specifically the version seen on the 2000s live-action television show, Smallville. Introduced as the original high school crush of Clark Kent years before he ever met Lois Lane, Lana Lang was the girl of Clark's dreams ever since he was a little alien boy growing up in Smallville. And while it took a few years for her to eventually discover Clark's superpowered secret, and even though they wouldn't wind up together, Lana was still an incredibly important part of Clark's life in the show, and often found herself having to get saved at super speed without Clark accidentally revealing his identity. Seriously though, how many times can a small-town teenager get kidnapped by supervillains? Coming in at number 3, we have Diana Prince, aka the one and only Wonder Woman. Although most incarnations of these characters wind up falling into the role of supportive friends, there's no denying that Superman and Wonder Woman have definitely shared some sparks over the years. Both being incredibly powerful superhumans that understand each other's heroic line of work, it makes sense why these two inspiring leaders of the Justice League will occasionally wind up together, whether it's a short-lived romance before finding who they're truly meant to be with, as in the New 52 universe, or lifelong companions, as seen in Kingdom Come. Whatever the case, romantic or platonic, Superman and Wonder Woman will always have each other's backs. Coming in at number 2, we have Jay Nakamura, the boyfriend of the next generation Superman, Jonathan Kent. When it comes to dating adventurous journalists and reporters, apparently the Kent family is like father, like son, as Jonathan Kent's primary love interest so far is the independent journalist Jay Nakamura. Initially meeting when John accidentally revealed his secret identity during a rescue attempt, Jay has some mild superpowers of his own, capable of phasing through solid matter, and runs his own independent reporters network and fights for truth and justice in his own unique way. Endlessly supportive of all the stress that John is under as the new Superman of planet Earth, Jay is one of the best DC characters of the last few years, and hopefully will continue to be a key ally of John's for many years to come. And finally, coming in at our top spot, we obviously have to go with Lois Lane. The definitive and most iconic love interest in perhaps all of comic book history, Lois Lane has evolved over the years from being a frequent damsel in distress to being a key ally in Superman's mission to protect the DC Universe and the planet Earth. A daring reporter with a fiery passion for justice, Lois Lane is exactly the type of inspiring woman that Clark Kent needs in his life, and throughout all the many cartoons, live-action adaptations, and other versions of the characters, somehow Superman and Lois Lane always seem to find each other, making her the definitive love interest for the Man of Steel. Coming in at number 10, we have a bit of an honorable mention with Maya Hansen from the MCU film Iron Man 3. A genetic scientist who helped create the Extremis virus, Maya doesn't really get a lot to do in the actual movie we got to see, mainly being a former fling of Tony's who is helping the main villain, tries to have a change of heart, but then gets awkwardly killed for her efforts by Aldrich Killian. In the original script of the movie, however, Maya was initially intended to be the main villain, and the mastermind behind Extremis, a former flame of Tony Stark's that had developed the technology specifically to destroy him. And while the actual movie cut down her role considerably and changed her character's fate, she still gets an honorable mention for the villainous love interest she almost was. Coming in at number 9, we have Joanna Navenna, the very first fiancée of Tony Stark. Revealed in a flashback storyline during the 1980s, Joanna was a young woman engaged to Tony Stark when he first began to act as the superhero Iron Man. Unaware of his secret double life, Joanna at first was pushed away by Tony's odd behavior and assumed him to be cheating until he finally told her the truth about his identity as Iron Man. And while for a time Joanna would encourage Tony to keep being a hero, she would eventually come to realize that he couldn't be both a superhero and a good husband to her, and so eventually broke off their engagement and hasn't been mentioned in the Marvel Universe ever since. Coming in at number 8, we have Kathy Dare. Tony's had his fair share of bad relationships over the years, but few have ended as poorly as his romance with Kathleen Dare, a woman who took Tony's playboy ways incredibly personally and would eventually get back at Tony by shooting him in the chest. Paralyzed from this attack and suffering from severe nerve damage, Tony decided to stop his own heart so that he'd be placed into cryostasis until a solution could be found to his nerve damage. Unfortunately, Tony didn't tell many people what his plan was, causing many of his friends to believe he had died for good, and with Kathy becoming extremely grief-stricken after thinking she had killed her ex-boyfriend in a pretty dark ending to a pretty dark storyline. Coming in at number 7, we have the villainous Madame Mask. Daughter of another Iron Man villain known as Count Nefaria, Mask first met Tony Stark while undercover at Stark Industries under the name of Chrissy Longfellow. Becoming so romantically involved that they purchased a penthouse apartment together, things seemed great for Tony and Chrissy until her true identity was finally revealed and Iron Man accidentally destroyed the machine that was keeping her father alive, even if he would later reappear down the road. Furious at this turn of events, Madame Mask embraced her true scarred visage and left Tony for good, committing herself to becoming a criminal mastermind and becoming yet another member of Iron Man's Rogues Gallery.
Number 6, Black Canary, Green Arrow, and Batman. This one is from a previous continuity, and because it's older, not as many people know that it exists, but hey, it does. Green Arrow and Black Canary are definitely more famous for being together than Batman and Black Canary are, even though they also were together in the All-Star reality somewhat as well, which is a thing that happened. But did you know that even in a main continuity story, Black Canary actually considered leaving Ollie for Batman? It's true. At the time, Black Canary was doubting if she really wanted to be with Green Arrow, and at that time, Batman was basically there for her. But ultimately, when push came to shove, and Batman and Green Arrow were kind of like somewhat pitted against one another for Black Canary's affections, more Green Arrow pitted against Batman than the other way around, she decided to stay with her would-be mainstay, Oliver Queen. Number 5, Jean Grey, Cyclops, and Emma Frost. Probably not the most iconic love triangle featuring Jean and Psyche, but definitely getting up there in popularity and notoriety is the awkward romance that exists between Jean and Psyche and Emma. It's just a big beautiful mess. Jean Grey and Cyclops were married when Cyclops started seeing Emma Frost psychically. What can I say? The man has a thing for psychic mutant ladies. It's kind of his thing. The really weird thing though was that Emma was actually trying to help Cyclops seemingly with kind of like psychic therapy, role-playing as Jean in Cyclops' mind to allow him to feel closer to his wife, who at the time he felt very distant from. Needless to say, being married to an Omega-level telepath like Jean means that eventually, if you have a psychic affair, she's kind of bound to find out, which she did, putting Jean and Emma, who already weren't super friendly as it was, at odds with one another. I still dream of a day when Emma and Jean can join romantic forces themselves and close this love triangle, but I don't know if we're there yet, but maybe one day. Krakoa gives me hope. Number 4, Eddie Brock, Venom, and Anne Wang. Another strange but important love triangle from the comics involves none other than a black ball of alien goo named Venom. Because, of course it does. Not only is Venom considered to be one of the most popular characters over at Marvel, but the alien being is also known for being somehow one of the sexiest characters around too, if you can believe that. People just, I don't know, they really love symbiotes. It's just a whole thing. You know who also loves Venom? Eddie. And Eddie was once married to Anne, continuing to love her and pine after her even after they were separated, with Venom even bonding to Anne at one point to create She-Venom. In fact, Anne and Eddie's secret child, Dylan, even was considered to be somewhat of a genetic offspring of all three of them, with Venom, now bonded to Dylan, even sometimes acting in a caregiver or parental role. Number 3, Hawkman, Hawkgirl, and Green Lantern. Hawkman and Hawkgirl are known for being a strong superhero powerhouse couple usually, but they aren't the only two who are shipped together. Hawkgirl and Green Lantern John Stewart have also been known for having a deep connection to one another. When we take a look over at the DCAU, these two are not only known for being good friends and colleagues, but also at one point even ending up together, and are definitely maintained as having a sort of will they won't they style dramatic relationship in the animated universe. In an alternate future, John and Shiera even likely have a son together. That's what we're led to believe, and their son is known as Warhawk. However, Hawkgirl and Hawkman are generally also known for being together at DC because it is believed that they are both reincarnations of former Thanagarian lovers, so that kind of just ties them together throughout all time. Number 2, MJ, Spider-Man, and Black Cat. Another super popular one as we head back to the Marvel side of things is Mary Jane, Spider-Man, and Black Cat. It might even be the reason that you clicked on this list. MJ and Peter have come a long way in the comics, from family friends to schoolmates to close friends to lovers to husband and wife, and then kind of just back to friends again before once more returning to more than that, only to seemingly be split split up once more, so it's been a tumultuous ride. Even their marriage wasn't smooth sailing, with most of it involving one or both of them wondering if being together was really the right choice for them. Black Cat, however, has been with Spider-Man for a time, but was more interested in the vigilante hero side of him than, you know, the man behind the mask, which meant that the two could never really end up together long term, because Black Cat was more interested in a persona than she was in, you know, Peter himself. When it comes to Felicia and Mary Jane, these two women for years were known for being pretty much at each other's throats, especially in regard to Felicia's feelings about MJ. However, more recently in the main continuity, the two teamed up together to do a heist in order to protect Peter against an enemy of Black Cat's. And in the Marvel mangaverse, Black Cat even saved MJ's life with a kiss. Number 1. Wolverine, Jean Grey, and Cyclops. Probably one of the most iconic love triangles around, at least in my opinion, is the one between Wolverine, Jean, and Psyche. While not a traditional love triangle in the sense that, you know, it isn't specifically closed, with Cyclops and Wolverine not explicitly having a romance between them, even this love triangle has become closer in years to that model of a closed one, especially with everything going on Krakoa, and, you know, Psyche and Wolverine sometimes holding hands in the comics. Just saying, there's some implications. A closed love triangle with a few branches coming off of it, at least. Wolverine definitely has other people he loves, as does Psyche, but for the most part, Jean is pretty much stuck between these two heroes and fellow teammates. Although at one point back in the day, it seemed as though Angel actually may have had a chance with Jean. That didn't really end up going anywhere, but Angel was, I mean, everyone was really hot for Jean back then. The Professor also. Oh boy. Number 10. Hawkeye. Well, some may ship these two, and they have had some flirty moments in the Matt Fraction and David Aja Hawkeye series. They have never really been a thing. Still, that doesn't prevent others from dreaming, and you cannot deny that these two characters definitely have chemistry. Of course, their chemistry likely comes from the fact they are just such great friends. In fact, Clint considers Kate to be his best friend. Sorry, Natasha. At one point, Hawkeye and Hawkeye seemingly share a kiss in the 2016 Hawkeye series in issue number 14. At least, that's what the cover teased. In reality, this kiss wasn't between Clint and Kate at all, but rather Clint and Madame Mask, who was in a Kate Bishop clone body at the time. Oh, comics. Despite even the flirty moments that the two shared in the 2012 Hawkeye series, in the letters column it was more implied that there was no intention for there to be anything romantic between these two, and that Kate was not pining for Clint or anything like that, but simply saw him as her mentor, her friend, and someone who she therefore cared very deeply for. Which meant that yes, he could say mean things to her that would hurt and affect her. There's a whole point where he's basically like, look, I don't want to sleep with you, and people were like, oh my goodness, was Kate like hurt by that? Because does she want to sleep with Clint? I don't know how I feel about that. And they were like, I don't think so. Stephen Wacker, who was the assistant editor, I believe, on that book at the time, was like, yeah, that's not what I saw. I saw more of just her being like, ouch, like that's kind of mean to say. That hurts. Even though I don't want to sleep with you. I think it would be weird. I don't ship it. But if you ship it, that's okay. Number 9. Jack. Jack was Kate's one-night stand who appears in the 2016 all-new Hawkeye series in issue number 3. The night before, at the end of issue number 2, Kate and her friend and fellow superhero America Chavez decided to go out dancing as part of an attempt to cheer up Kate and help her forget about Clint after the pair of Hawkeyes had a falling out. Jack is the very nice man that she meets on her night out dancing with America. The two apparently hit it off and end up going back to Kate's apartment. The next morning, Jack is revealed to be a super sweetheart who wants to spend the day with his new paramour and also wakes Kate up with a coffee that he went out to get for her after waking up early and being unable to fall back asleep. What a cutie! Unfortunately for Jack, Kate isn't really in a place to be in a relationship right now, so she turns down Jack's offer. Honestly, I think Kate missed out here. Jack also happens to be wearing a lot of purple, which I think is a design signal that they too could have been just perfect for one another. Oh well. Kate had stuff she needed to work out, and at least she was upfront about that. Although America does later comment that Kate's aversion to attachments is making her sound a lot like the wrong Hawkeye, if you catch her drift. I gotta say, I agree. Being like, I can't have attachments, I'm a hero. It's a very Clint Barton thing to say, I feel like. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more Kate Bishop lists, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Although I don't know if we could do 10 more love interests, because honestly, finding these 10 was pretty tricky, to be honest. Number 8. Miles Morales. In the reality of 1610, Kate Bishop is quite different from her 616 counterpart. Instead of becoming Hawkeye Hawkeye, she is just plain old Katie Bishop. Here she ends up becoming the girlfriend of superhero Spider-Man, aka Miles Morales. In fact, Miles likes her and trusts her so much that he decides to reveal the truth of his secret identity to her. However, this doesn't work out great for him as Katie's parents are actually Hydra agents. Katie ends up telling them what was revealed to her, and when Miles is invited over, they drug and kidnap him, taking him to a place where he is tormented and experimented on. Eventually, Miles escapes their clutches and is saved by the young Ultimates. Despite Katie feeling bad about what happened, their relationship does not survive her ultimate betrayal. Still, for a while, Miles was a love interest of the ultimate version of Catherine Bishop. Number 7. America Chavez. Just as Clint isn't really a romantic partner of Kate's, the same could be suggested when it comes to a relationship with America, fellow hero and friend. In fact, while Clint thinks of Kate as his best friend, I'd say that Kate has a few best friends personally, including Clint, Cassie Lang aka Stature, and America Chavez. America tends to be one of the first people that Kate calls when she needs advice or help, whether it be personal or professional, and it goes the same way for America. She usually calls Kate. The two ended up getting to know one another when America got tangled up in the Young Avengers adventures. Since the time they started working together, they have become close friends who both hold a lot of respect for one another. Although Kate is very much straight and America is very much gay, these two still have great chemistry, and if Kate ever did end up wanting to explore her sexuality, I could see America being a great partner for her personally. Still, these two have never been together romantically in the comics, and like Kate and Clint, this is pretty much purely fanship. Possibly my fanship. I really like America and Kate together. Perhaps this is even more fanship too than Hawkeye and Hawkeye, as the two don't really have flirty moments together in the comics, just a strong friendship and bond, and a lot of fun. They have a lot of fun together. But hey, Kate hasn't been around that long, so I needed some more love interest to flush out this list. And I love these two together, so yeah, this is my fanship. Hopefully that's cool with you. Let me know if you also would ship America and Kate if they decided to be a thing. Number 6. Black Cat, Spider-Man, Mary Jane. A constant love triangle that is still ongoing even today, and was still somehow ongoing even when Peter was married to MJ. Mary Jane was a family friend, the niece of Aunt May's friend Anna Watson. For a good while, Aunt May hyped up MJ, and her appearance was actually teased constantly in the comics, till one issue when finally Peter and readers would actually get to meet Mary Jane, with MJ speaking one of the lines she has become the most famous for in this first appearance: "You just hit the jackpot." Black Cat, on the other hand, is someone that Peter met not while in his civilian identity of Peter Parker, but while in his superhero persona of Spider-Man. Initially, it also seemed like Felicia Hardy's Black Cat was a bit older than Peter, with her being shocked when she first kissed him, and afterward realized that there was a bit of an age difference between them. However, despite this, and despite Black Cat being a thief and less clearly defined when it came to her alignment, a relationship would later blossom between the two. It wouldn't work out, and Peter would ultimately end up married to MJ until their marriage was traded in a bargain with Mephisto in exchange for Aunt May's life. For a while, Black Cat competed for Peter's attention, even when he was married, attempting to make him jealous by dating his former adversary turned close friend, Flash Thompson. True story. Number 5. Speedy, Wonder Girl, The Flash. This was a rough one. Wonder Girl and Speedy were pretty much an item for some time in the comics. Not really official though at this point that we're talking about in the 2016 Titans series. However, it seemed like they were making strides in their relationship, with Speedy even like getting hyped to confirm his commitment to Donna when he found her kissing Wally West's The Flash. Wally was really the only one to remember his life before the New 52 reset, including his married life with Linda and their kids together. But Linda didn't remember him, and after trying to make a connection with her, he was shot down. But Donna was there to pick up the pieces. Ultimately, Donna and Wally would only have a very brief romance, with Donna ultimately deciding to commit to Speedy instead, and Wally later ending back up with Linda and eventually saving his kids who were trapped in the dark multiverse. So kinda all worked out in the end. Although I don't think Donna and Speedy are together now. It worked for a bit for them. Number 4. Mr. Fantastic, Invisible Woman, Namor. I've always found this love triangle to be very interesting because I really do think Mr. Fantastic and Namor are pretty fitting partners for Sue Storm, like both of them are. This is also just one of those love triangles where Sue is very set in her relationship with her husband Reed, but where I feel, despite their marital bliss, the threat of Namor splitting them up feels very real because Namor is like a pretty reasonable threat to Reed. In most cases, there is a relationship outcome in the love triangle I prefer, and it's very rare when I feel like both partners suit the person who is considered to be the most desired member of said said triangle, the top point, if you will, what I like to call them. Like people are looking up. I love that person. But with this one, I can see Sue being with either Reed or Namor, and it could work. So it's really quite a nail biter whenever she feels a pull towards ending her marriage and possibly leaving Reed for the Submariner. Feels like a real threat. Number 3, Mary Jane as Spider-Man, Gwen Stacy. Well, Black Cat and MJ and Spider-Man are a more popular love triangle in the modern day comics. Initially, Peter was actually kind of stuck between a different choice when it came to the women in his life. MJ was still around doing her thing and being super charismatic, having a lot of fun, and was usually the center of attention. But despite this, a different young woman managed to win over Pete's heart at the time, the studious and sweet Gwen Stacy. Gwen was Peter's first love, and despite the fact that, like everyone, he thought MJ was attractive, Pete really only had eyes for Gwen at the time. Still, there were elements of a will they, won't they dynamic to Peter and MJ's relationship even before Gwen suffered her tragic fate. Although for the most part, the four friends were usually matched up as such. Peter's best friend Harry Osborn with MJ and Peter with Gwen. And then sometimes Flash was also hanging around as kind of a fifth wheel, but I believe he also thought MJ was like an attractive person, so I think Flash was also kind of like, maybe I could be with MJ, but no. Number 2, Catwoman, Batman, Talia al Ghul. Well, some people don't like to think of Batman and Talia al Ghul as having a romantic history because of, well, some very awful things that Talia did to Batman. You know what I'm talking about. Honestly, terrible. The reality is she has been a romantic partner of his on and off for years. Like the Joker and Harley Quinn, they don't really have the healthiest relationship, which is often why most people prefer Batman with Catwoman. However, that doesn't mean that these two haven't competed for Batman's attention, and that they haven't both been pretty big contenders, I'd say. Although I think hands down, Catwoman does win that romantic fight almost any day of the week. I'm definitely in the camp of Catwoman and Batman together. Forever. Number 1, Deadpool, Death, Thanos. Most people know the unrequited love between Thanos and Death, or Mistress Death as she is sometimes known, but did you know that Deadpool also had a thing with Death for a while? It's true. Deadpool has actually been shown as wanting to end his life multiple times, and so of course he is also enamored with Death, and in fact she actually probably prefers him to Thanos, if you can believe it. Which honestly I can believe it. I feel like Deadpool is way more fun. Would rather date him than Thanos for sure. Thanos was actually so jealous of their relationship that he cursed Wade at one point to be unable to die just to keep him from death. So very serious competition there.